Welcome to the latest edition of the Google for Business podcast with me, Martin Shervington. Rand Fishkin, welcome. This is Google for Business, by the way. That's what we're talking about, show. But it's going to be broader. It's about you, and it's about search, and it's about really what you've been doing over the last many years to help people improve their businesses. You're smart, Rand. I have to say, I'm not only have you got a moustache that I could never grow, but you've led a more detailed approach to helping people. Really, I feel that's what Moz has done. I think you've done something. I'm going to blow a little bit of smoke now. Your honesty over the past few years about it ain't easy. It's not easy at all, And sometimes you just got to put your hands up and say, folks, I need other people to do some of the stuff that I'm not as good at as other people are. That's what you've done, I think. So you've got humanity and, ready for the excellence, all wrapped into one. I wasn't prepared for that introduction, but it's true. It's heartfelt.
Well, that's incredibly kind, Martin. And, I would say that one of the things I've discovered over the years that's worked really well for me, both in business and kind of in life overall, is just being very transparent. And I think part of being transparent is being self-aware. I think a lot of your early life is this kind of discovery to figure out who you are and what works for you and what doesn't, and how your weird chemistry of brain and experiences fit together. And for me, that's been, I think very visible the last few years, especially on my personal blog, which I think is what you're referring to with a lot of those. And that's, it's been a cathartic experience. It's also been really humbling and almost exciting to see the response from people, because, I think when you write about things like personal failings and weakness and depression and having to step down and the frustrations of your company not growing the way you want.
Let's dive into search. Where's it at right now?
I think we're at the stages of maturity for sort of web search and mobile search. I think we're at a very, very early stage for what I'd call sort of personal assistant search and life inventory search. I think that those kinds of things, the kinds of things that you see from Siri and from Google Now, that's at a really, really early stage. But web search, it feels like, it's been pretty darn similar for 7, 8, 9 years now. You get results. Granted, Google's always throwing new things in the mix, and there's always new opportunities. I think if you're a marketer in search, it's exciting. It's constantly changing. There's a lot of new and different stuff, but it's not quite, it doesn't feel like the early stages anymore. We're not dealing with, this sort of spam still works and this sort of spam doesn't. And here's this little trick that'll get you ranking above your competitors consistently. And, Google's pretty smart these days. And so I think it's really about building a brand and building a site that people want and love, and then making sure that all of your SEO tunes and dials are put together correctly. And that can be an incredibly long list depending on what you do.
Yeah. I mean, getting into the detail of that, do you have a list yourself? Do you work with a list and you go through and you do that for your own sites, and do you do it for the client sites as well? Is that how you approach it?
So we, just to be totally clear, I don't do any paid client consulting work anymore. I haven't done that since 2008. Yeah. Moz is just a software business. That being said, we do have a customer success sort of help and support team. They use a technical SEO checklist to help out folks that buy our software. And that was actually designed by Annie Cushing. And I think very highly of Annie, and she's got an amazing sort of site audit checklist that you can find it by Googling it. And I definitely recommend that.
Interesting. So I assumed that in the background you were doing agency work.
No. Well, so one of the things that we found early in our sort of life as a software company was that a lot of agencies and consultants wouldn't use our software if they thought we were competing with them.
Interesting.
agencies would worry, hey, is Rand or is Moz getting this data on the back end, and then they're going to pitch my client out from under me and take them away. And so we stepped entirely away from the consulting business. What is that? About 7 years ago now.
Ah, I'm being educated. Thanks, Ryan. Let's talk about IoT.
Yeah.
I was watching a video you did with Eric earlier today, and that's early stages. How do you think that's going to influence getting people's attention?
I suspect there will be more ways to message people, and I suspect that there will be more interconnected devices that have some either marketing or onboarding opportunities. But this could just be me. I think those are going to be relatively limited to the set of things that people care about in context. Like I am not a big believer that you'll be able to put whatever ads you want on a refrigerator.
Yeah.
Call me a skeptic. I just don't see it. I don't think that your remote control for your TV or your couch or all these things are going to start turning into your Nest home thermometer are going to start turning into marketing and advertising platforms. I'm a much bigger believer that there will be very, very limited certain ways that they interact together. For example, I could imagine that your home thermometer will prompt you, hey, we can now connect to these devices in your car. Hey, we can now connect to these devices that you can get for your home. And so maybe there's a little bit of marketing and advertising potential there in the interoperability of those devices. But I don't see the Internet of Things as being, oh, look, now everything's an ad platform.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you think where do you think social's going? Where are you at with social right now?
Let's see. I can't decide, actually. I can't decide whether I think, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter sort of have enough momentum and have enough traction and buy-in from people that it doesn't make sense to switch, or whether there's kind of a phenomenon of every generation wants their own and they want to get away from the platforms of the past. So I think it'll be interesting to observe. Social is one of those things where 10 years ago, it almost didn't exist at all. It certainly wasn't popular. If we were to go back that far in search, we'd have to go back to maybe 1996, 1997.
Yeah.
So I don't think that in that time we could have imagined where we are today, and that's how I feel a little bit about social. I do generally have the belief that there's still a lot of opportunities for niche social channels. I could see a breakup of certain folks going away from Facebook and going into other things, and that's where they run their networks related to their interests or their niches or their personal friend groups or what have you.
What do you think about this 9% Twitter index into Google? That was a Moz stat, wasn't it? We were all watching this one, I think.
Yeah, I think we're at something like, let me see what it is today, something like 6% of all search results that we see. Yeah, it is 5.8% of all search results that we see have some result from Twitter in them, which is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah. You've just given me an idea, Rand. I'm going to ask you after. Hang on. Okay. So so it's extraordinary because they're promoting somebody else's business at the top of search. Yeah, I know. We're all like, what's going on?
I think the only reason that they would possibly do that is because it's shown them greater engagement and greater searcher happiness, right? Google is not in the business of promoting other people's content and other people's businesses. They, in fact, over the last few years have put more and more of their own content and their own, sort of owned channels in front of searchers. So I think this is the only reason that they do that with Twitter is because they feel like this is a way for us to be as fresh, as timely, as engaging as possible. And they worry a little bit about the things that Facebook could do with graph search and with fresh search inside of Facebook. And so they want to preempt that in every way possible.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk a little about Google Plus. A little. Just a little, because we connected a little bit by that, but it was Eric, actually, and Mark was where the social connections came. But that's one of the values of social networks. It isn't just the contribution, the distribution side of it, it's the relationships. And Absolutely. Being able to say, hey, do you want to jump in a hangout? And you say, or Skype as we're in, and say, yes, that's always the underlying piece, is it's relationships. But where are you at in terms of the network? Because you were a proponent for the early days, and where's things now, do you think?
I think Google Plus makes sense for a limited number of people to participate in. If you're in one of the communities where Google Plus is still very popular, those include things like photography, travel, certainly marketing like us, some technology sectors, then I think being on Google Plus can make good sense, and you should go ahead and jump in there if you aren't already. But I would say that before I'd recommend it to anyone else, I would need to see some indication that Google's going to continue to invest in it, that they're going to push it and make it grow. I think they've taken away a lot of the initial sort of growth mechanisms that they introduced with Google Plus. So we'll see. I think they've got more of a sink or swim on your own Google Plus philosophy nowadays versus what they did 3-4 years ago when it first came out, and they were, everything you want to do with Google, you better do through Google Plus. And every local business needs to have a Google Plus account, and every person who writes for the web needs to have a Google Plus account because of authorship, and they've removed a lot of those. Okay, let's talk about local business. You mentioned about that on the original Google Plus. What do you think they need to pay attention to in search now? And I've looked at the Moz stuff, and I know you've got a huge list. Yeah, well, local is one of those where it's a little frustrating for me, because I think today, there is a sort of a set standard structure for how you go about doing local SEO. That includes optimizing your Google My Business page and making sure all that's correct, and getting listing and citation consistency correct. And it looks like local is considering links a little bit more than they had in the past. And so link building or link earning is once again a little more popular for local businesses. There's some geographic things which are hard to control but do influence local search. And then I guess my broad take on local is this does not feel like what we currently see in Google local, right? With the local packs or whatever we're calling those now. The screw you Yelp box. Is that the official name? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Those things to me feel like a half-hearted, poor user experience attempt at local and maps. I actually think that the iterations prior that they've had, where they showed the map on the right-hand side and had more results, and a few of the different ways that they've graphically done that have been way better than what they have now. Right now, I think they're just copying the mobile interface on desktop. It doesn't look great on mobile. It looks way worse on desktop. Yeah. Honestly, it's kind of a piece of crap, right? If I were Yelp, I'd be cheering for them to maintain that, because I think it's just a terrible experience. And personally, as a user, I don't click it and engage with it much. We're going to be getting some data soon. Moz is getting some clickstream data, and then we'll be able to analyze, what are the rates at which hundreds of thousands of people are actually clicking through to search results and that sort of thing. So we'll be able to take a look at that. But I suspect Google's planning something new in local, and that could shake up the scene again. Okay, moving on. I've got to talk to you about this. How long does it take you to write a Whiteboard Friday? It's about 30 minutes to draw it up on the board, sometimes 35, and then about 15 minutes to film it, 10, 15 minutes to film it. And we usually take a few minutes to put together that opening shot, which are sometimes kooky and sometimes related to the whiteboard and sometimes just for fun.
I thought you were going to say 3
that's
days. I thought you were going to say 3 days. Honestly, it's like, no, well, I need Wednesday to write it and then film it on Thursday and it goes out Friday. Wow.
Yeah, so it's about an hour. Yeah, I have today. I have 2:30 to 3:30 booked up for Whiteboard Friday. My voice is a little, as you can hear, my voice is a little raw from being sick over the weekend. So we'll see. I might have to move it to tomorrow. But yeah, it's a quick process, and that is mostly, part of that comes from just having a lot of experience and doing it, and part of it is just because the Whiteboard Friday content, drawing it up on the board is actually the creative process.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I express, okay, what do I want to talk about with this subject? You only have 10 minutes, right? So you're only going to cover one small aspect of a marketing channel or a tactic or a strategy or an approach. And so that's something that I am able to do, thankfully, in those few minutes. We do have people come in and do guest Whiteboard Fridays. Usually we give them more like 90 minutes to write up what they want to do, and then film it in an hour after that. So for most other folks, it's 2.5 times as much time.
Hey, you're a pro.
Yeah.
Final advice for people, but don't go anywhere at the end because I want to ask you something, and then I know we've got to run on. So, final advice. What do you think? Yeah, what do you think people need to be paying attention to, and from the human side of it as well? Going back to that, for you personally, what advice would you give? Not just business.
Yeah, I found that one of the things I think a lot of people do in the web marketing world is they feel like they have an obligation to approach all of these different channels, right? Like I have to be on social. I have to have a presence on Facebook. I've heard video is hot and that's really engaging, so I need to do some video. Blogging is supposed to be really good for my SEO, so I'm going to go do some blogging. I think you can get torn in a lot of these different directions. And look, I participate in a lot of these channels, but I have passion and interest around each one of these. I think that's should be actually a limiting factor. So it's not just about what's working right now and what tactics can get you on the top of Google. I think one of the most important things for folks, especially small and medium businesses and folks who don't have a lot of time to give to their SEO efforts, what I would really encourage them to do is find the intersection of where you can provide real unique value. No one else in your space is sort of doing this thing that you feel like you can approach. Something that your customers and their influencers will actually care about, right? So sometimes it's very tough to reach your customers directly through marketing channels, but you can reach the people who influence them, who will recommend you. So you should think about that and think about where are they, how can I reach them, what will they care about? And then finally, you should find something that you are personally passionate and interested in. So if you love photography, that might be a great way to go from a content perspective. If you hate being on Facebook, you know what? Maybe it's okay to not be on Facebook. If you are just kind of done with SEO, like you're not interested in it, you know what? Paid advertising actually has so many options and opportunities that you could pursue that path and get great at that and probably have a lot of success completely ignoring SEO. You might want to hire a consultant and get a little bit of help, but I'm just saying that I don't think it is essential that you have to do every single marketing channel and tactic that you hear about just because it's hot. If you don't personally have an affinity for it, it's unlikely that you're going to be great at doing that thing.
Yeah.
If you're not great at doing it, you're probably not adding much value to the web. And over time, you're going to become the noise, not the signal.
That, my googly lovers, was the Google for Business podcast. I'm Martin Shermanton, and I look forward to you listening in next time. Until then.